This week on Talking Pictures with Neil Rosen, we'll look at the new film Wolves, starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Ian McKellen's latest, called The Critic, set in 1930s London. Lee, starring Kate Winslet as real-life World War II photojournalist Lee Miller. Plus the long-awaited sequel, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. We've got all that and many more movie picks coming up. I'm Neil Rosen. Welcome to Talking Pictures. It's our monthly Critics Roundtable show, where we debate what's worth watching and what's not when it comes to new releases, hidden gems, and Hollywood classics. Joining me today are Edward Douglas from Cinema Daily US, Mike Sargent from WBAI, and Randy Unger from Unger the Radar on Sirius XM. So let's start out with a look at several new films or series in theaters and or streaming, beginning with something called Lee, starring Kate Winslet. Let's take a look at a clip.
They're an historical record. Well, who cares? Nobody saw them. You didn't print them. I fought for them, Lee. I fought for them. These must be preserved. What, to sit in a filing cabinet? The ministry thought they may disturb people. This happened. This really happened. Lee, this happened. These images will disturb people more than they've already been disturbed. People need to move on. Move on. This little girl in a death camp, raped and beaten. How does she move on?
Ed, let's talk about Lee.
Kate Winslet plays war photographer Lee Miller. It's the narrative feature debut of cinematographer Ellen Kurz, who actually was nominated for an Oscar for directing a documentary. She's directed a lot for television. This is her first narrative feature. Kate Winslet is pretty amazing, as you'd expect. I mean, she's an Oscar-winning actor. But it basically follows Miller as she goes to the front lines of World War II. And she ends up shooting a lot of the atrocities of the Holocaust, where a lot of Americans did not know what was going on. Her character was an influence on Kirsten Dunst's character in Civil War, a movie that came out earlier this year. But yeah, Winslet is great, and I also like the cast around her. I thought it was a very well-made biopic. I was really surprised by Andy Samberg, because Andy Samberg has a dramatic role, and it's I never see that.
Yeah, true. Mike?
I liked it as well. I found it a little drier than I expected it to be. I thought that her performance, Kate Winslet, was very good. And yes, Andy Samberg definitely was a bit of a revelation because I've never seen him so subdued. But I thought it was okay. Not as good as I wanted it to be.
Yeah. I was surprised because I didn't recognize Andy Samberg at first.
Right. I didn't know it was Andy Samberg.
Took me a while.
And then I'm like, oh my God, that's Andy Samberg. Yeah. That's how, like, no comedy whatsoever, you know?
Very surprising turn from Samberg. I must agree with you guys. I think this is an Oscar caliber performance from Winslet. I think she has a really good shot at a statue next year. I didn't really know anything about Lee Miller, but this movie definitely, it educated me and it entertained me at the same time. And as for Ellen Kurz, I think she did a great job as director. I know she comes from cinematography, but I think that transition was very smooth in this film.
I think I agree with you. I think Kate Winslet gives a tremendous performance. I thought the first half was kind of flat, but once she starts going into the concentration camps, and there's this very famous photograph. I mean, this is based on a true story, where she's in Hitler's bathtub. I mean, and seeing the atrocities in the bodies being stacked up. I mean, the movie takes a very different turn, and I think it becomes much better. I also think that it's good that it brings. I mean, I never really heard of Lee Miller. Man Ray and other people have gotten the attention, so I'm glad that she's getting the attention on this. Also, it took her 8 years, to get this thing to the screen, and I also like the fact that learning about her, women photographers during the war weren't really allowed, and it's kind of like you get a woman's perspective on taking these photographs. Some of these photographs would not be from the mindset of a woman taking it. So we all recommend it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm glad she made it.
Good. All right, moving on. Mike, tell us about a movie called A Mistake.
A Mistake is a new medical drama, and it's directed by Christine Jeffs, and it's based on a novel by Carl Schuker. And it stars Elizabeth Banks. She's a very gifted surgeon who is in a hospital, and this takes place in New Zealand, but you really wouldn't know it for some reason.
Well, she has that accent.
Right. Everybody has like a weird non-New Zealand accent. But The hospital she's in is about to do something to make, let's just say, in the interest of public transparency, they're going to release all the statistics of all the surgeons. But that's not necessarily a good thing. She, when the film opens, has just overseen an operation and made a mistake. And that mistake is essentially what causes her life to somewhat unravel. I like this film, and I think that this is probably the best thing Elizabeth Banks has ever done.
Better than the 40-year-old virgin?
Better than the
Seriously?
40-year-old virgin. But I do think that this is not like an upbeat film. Right. This is a very, very somber film, and I think the ending might be slightly dissatisfying for some people and extremely dissatisfying for others.
Randy?
I think it's a strong drama. I think Banks did a great job, actually. I haven't really seen her in this light in anything previously. It was a little dull in sort of the middle portion of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
It was very, talk heavy, which, I enjoy that sometimes. But in this film, I think they could have punched it up with maybe some better relationships, some better character development. But again, Banks really delivers a solid performance, and the dialogue almost reminded me of Aaron Sorkin in a weird way.
Yes, definitely.
I did appreciate that as well.
So. Not as good as Aaron Sorkin.
Definitely not.
But who's as good as Aaron
that's
Sorkin?
A good point.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like Elizabeth Banks doing drama. I mean, she did another movie recently called Skincare, which I liked even less. My big problem with this movie is, first of all, her character's named Liz Taylor. So every time they say her name,
that's very distracting.
It's like Liz Taylor. It's like it's a somber movie, but like you can't help but laugh when you hear Liz
and
Taylor.
nobody reacts to that.
No one actually makes a comment about
My
it.
name's Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
Nobody named
Let's go to surgery.
Exactly. And then there's that accent. I mean, the Kiwi accent. I'm like, why did they need to do this? I know it's based on a book. I don't know if it's based on a real event.
I was wondering if it was based on a real event.
But the Kiwi accent, like, why? Elizabeth Banks is a fine actor. Why put her through that? Because it's going to just be made fun of. By critics, like, and it really just distracted me. The name and the accent distracted me.
But who cares what critics think?
I did like Elizabeth Banks' performance, but this is a hard movie to watch. I mean, there's a lot of blood going all over the place and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Don't eat dinner while you watch this movie.
But as they say in the movie, or one doctor says in it raises a question which is very interesting about doctors. Are they going to refuse because of the trouble that she gets into because she's blamed for this mistake? Are doctors going to refuse? The doctors are very reluctant with lawsuits and all this stuff these days, but are they going to refuse to operate on vulnerable patients because it's going to risk their reputation and there's going to be consequences? So I thought that was an interesting point that it raised. But I think it took a long way to get to that point, and I think a lot of it, as you were saying, Randy, there's some lull moments in this particular film. So I don't know. Ed's mixed on it, I'm mixed on it, but you two guys would recommend it?
I'd recommend it for her performance.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on it, I think.
I think the point of the movie is worth talking about, just personal accountability versus public transparency.
We're all critics here, and there's a new film called The Critic, and it stars Ian McKellen. So let's take a look at a clip.
I'm the chief drama critic of the Daily Chronicle.
Jimmy Erskine's never liked me.
Hold your breath, for here is theatrical sewage.
It's a disaster. You should talk to him.
Over the last 10 years, you've compared me to livestock, creatures of the sea, and an extinct bird. It's going to stop.
Oh, are you retiring? Tone it down. More beauty, less beast.
Fellow critic Randy, tell us about The Critic.
So we've got The Critic, not to be confused by the John Lovett's 90s cartoon show, which I'm sure we all appreciate. This film is actually based on a 2015 novel called Curtain Call by Anthony Quinn, not to be confused with the actor. It's set in 1934 London, focuses on a cantankerous theater critic played by Ian McKellen, who, when his job gets threatened, gets involved in a dark web of deceit and murder. We've got a lovely supporting cast here, Gemma Arterton, Mark Strong. They shine really well in this. It's got an adapted screenplay by Patrick Marber, and I think it services the actors very well and gives the characters some depth. I loved McKellen. I think he was perfect for this role, and I wanted to see more of this just cranky guy who he's just basically trying to save his own job, his own skin. And Gemma Arterton is a gorgeous woman. She's brilliant in this. She's kind of like a femme fatale type, and I think it's a very strong film. The Critic.
I'm a big Gemma Arterton fan. I'm a big Mark Strong fan. I like seeing them. I think Patrick Marber's screenplay is really good. He's an Oscar-nominated screenwriter. But But I think the tonally it's a little strange because it goes from a kind of a humorous thing, this really dark thing about 30s London, which looks nice. 30s London looks nice in this movie, but it's just the tone switches threw me off, and it kind of like made me not like it as much.
It's like a film noir wrapped up in like a drama.
Yeah.
It's kind of and there's also a very strong romantic element. So it doesn't really know what kind of genre it wants to be.
Well, I like the film, and I agree with you, Randy. I think that he's perfect for this, and I think there are a number of films that we're reviewing today where the main characters are not so likable, and I think that Ian McKellen plays someone that you kind of love to hate, and he's got secrets, and it does become very dark because he's kind of got a black heart, as it were. I like this film. I like the idea of looking at critics. Critics, I think, are the original influencers, and I did, like you, I liked seeing 30s London. But I'm very curious what the original ending to this film was, because that's what I understand they very much changed.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I want to say what it is. I can tell you later, though.
Tell me later.
Okay, tell us later. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really like this, not just because I'm a critic, but I mean, this was 1930s London, and even in like the 70s in New York, like when Frank Rich wrote for the Times, and he could like had the power to like close a play down. And everybody was like scared to death of this guy. And I mean, there's a line where he goes, you know, I'm paid as a pauper, but I live as a king. And if we remember, we've all been doing this for so long, all the junkets that they would take you on. But this guy, I mean, when this guy's job is threatened and he thinks he's going to get fired, I mean, he has absolutely no morals, absolutely no scruples whatsoever. And the movie does take a complete turn in a different direction. And then it becomes, it does become like a thriller.
Right.
And I found this thing fascinating, and I think Ian McKellen's performance was great. And I also liked, Gemma. How do you pronounce her name?
Gemma Arterton.
Gemma Arterton. I think she was excellent in this thing, and she doesn't really have a lot of morals either. But I won't really get into that as well. But I just kept watching this, and going like, really, wow, interesting, And as a critic, not that any of us would go to the extent anywhere near the length that this guy went to.
I hope not.
But it's just a whole different world of there was no television, and this guy just had power beyond belief, And McKellen's he's the show.
He is, but I do think it's also a meditation on like what will you do to keep your job, keep your career, because they both Gemma Arterton and Ian McKellen have no morals about when it comes to their career.
Well, she wants to be a star, and she'll do anything.
Exactly.
And
he wants to continue being a critic.
Life.
Right.
I mean, he talks to this out-of-work critic who lost his job, and his life is just miserable. And you could see McKellen looking, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. I kind of get up. And McKellen's just sitting in that scene when they're having in the restaurant, and it's just like these guys, like, I can't live my life like this, what am I supposed to do?
It was also interesting to see the black kid from Harry Potter actually do something.
Yeah. He was.
I haven't seen him in anything.
I highly recommend this.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm being prejudiced towards it, because
you just
I'm
want
a
the
critic.
days when critics had power. That's what you want.
I do feel we mentioned this character is a homosexual in a time in the 30s London where that becomes a factor of the story because it's frowned upon back then, and it was they had.
That's a spoiler, by the way. Just saying.
Is it a spoiler? I don't know.
I don't think that's a spoiler.
I also want to touch on the production design. I think it looked beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it did.
I mean, obviously we didn't live in the 30s, but I'm sure that's how it looked back then, from the cars to the sets to the costume design. I think it was a home run in that respect.
Well, McKellen seems to be like enjoying himself playing this part, devouring every moment. So
Definitely.
it's definitely worth seeing. There's a new movie called Wolves. It's on Apple TV Plus right now, also in theaters. Ed, tell us about it.
This is basically the Brad Pitt and George Clooney show. They are reunited for the first time since the Ocean's movies. Basically, a woman someone dies in her hotel room, and she calls for a fixer, which is a very similar role that George Clooney played in Michael Clayton. But George Clooney shows up, and then Brad Pitt shows up, and they're competing, but they're forced to work together to get rid of this body. This movie is it's not like brain surgery. It's not very deep. It's just fun, entertaining. It's mainly those two guys. When they're on screen, it's making fun of each other. It's a lot of fun. But I don't think it's something which you have to rush out to theaters. So if it's on Apple TV Plus, you can just see it there.
Mild fun at best, in my opinion. I think that this is, yes, the Brad Pitt, George Clooney show. And yeah, they're mildly amusing. And yeah, it is mildly amusing. It is not very original. There's not much that happens that you don't expect to happen. It's just okay. It is mildly amusing. That would be my review.
I mean, it's exactly what you expect it to be
Exactly.
from the trailer.
From the trailer.
From the get-go, when it starts, this is definitely the CUNY Pitt variety hour, I'd say. And actually, their back and forth, their exchanges kind of reminded me a little bit of Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau a little bit. Just give those two guys a gun, and this is the movie.
It's predictable by the numbers thing, and it's a thriller caper. But you know, as you said, Ed, yeah, I don't think you should pay full price to see this at the box office.
Guilty as charged.
But you know, if you have Apple TV Plus, if that, you know, on streaming service, there's worse ways to spend, you know, an hour and 45 minutes or whatever it is. I mean, yeah, the action scenes are serviceable. The plot is serviceable. There's a lot of holes in it. But who really cares? No. I mean,
somebody who spends money. I'm sorry.
What this really comes down to is the chemistry between Clooney and Pitt. And they have a lot of it, and they know how to like work off each other with this, you know, snappy dialogue, and actually elevate quick-witted lines to make them even funnier and better than it is. Yeah. So it's just, if you're just looking for some mindless thing to watch, you know, and you have that streaming service, sure, why? And you like these guys. Most people like these guys. I do. You know, I say give it a shot.
It's a thriller that doesn't really thrill.
Well,
yeah.
I do want to mention this is the new movie from John Watts. He wrote and directed it. He did the last 3 Spider-Man movies, so this is kind of more of his thing, where he basically is involved, and it's a very different movie for him from those Spider-Man movies, obviously.
Notice to Quit is not something that I'm telling my panel. It's the name of a new movie, and Mike Sargent's going to tell us all about it.
This is a new movie by first-time feature director Simon Hacker, and Michael Zagan stars as a failed actor who is now trying to sell real estate. But he's having a really bad day. He's 4 months behind on his rent. His daughter and his ex-wife are about to move to Florida. And let's just say it gets worse from there. Throughout the day, he is trying to show people apartments that are really crappy, that they really don't want. His daughter runs away from her babysitter to be with him, and he can't really be with her. And we just watch this character consistently make bad decisions throughout the film. I think it was well directed, and I think that the actress Casey Bellasoris, who plays the daughter's
great.
She's the best thing about the movie. She's the only reason really to watch this movie.
She's going somewhere.
Because you root for her. You do not root for the main character. And by the end of the movie, he is not changed. He has not made any better decisions, and I just don't like him as much as I want to. I feel like this is something of a wasted effort on a lot of people's parts. It's not a bad movie, but it's not one you can really get behind.
Randy?
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed it. I did not like Zagan.
Please tell me why.
At all.
I think it's a fun movie. They could have just swapped out the dad for any other. I think Nicolas Cage maybe 10 years ago would have been perfect in this.
Yeah, that would have been better.
I agree. Casey Bellasoris is fantastic. She's probably the best part of the movie. Something else that really caught my attention was the way that director Simon Hacker and cinematographer Mika Alston shot New York. I love movies shot in the city. This movie did not disappoint in that respect. It felt like you were running the sidewalks with them.
A lot more than wolves.
Right, agreed. Totally different. But yeah.
Ed?
Yeah, I agree with you about Michael Zagan to the point where I didn't like him at all, and because of that, I didn't like the father character. I mean, maybe with a better actor, it would have been
Robert
better.
Klein playing the father.
Oh yeah.
He's in the movie for a whole 3
No, I
minutes.
didn't like Michael. I didn't like Michael Zagan as the father character.
Oh,
I'm saying.
I see.
No,
Okay,
Robert
I'm
Klein
sorry.
appears for one scene.
Right.
He's like barely even
As
worth mentioning.
Zagan's father.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end for like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah, really
wasted
short.
opportunity.
Really
Seriously.
short. But anyway, I was going to say, because of that, I didn't like the movie because I couldn't get into his character, and it was kind of a movie that mystified me. Like, how did this movie get made? How did it get financed? It looked like it wasn't cheap. It was shot all over New York, but that was the biggest problem because I couldn't get into the character because I just don't like Michael Zagan as an actor.
Well, I love the television series The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which Michael Zagan played the husband of Maisel, Midge Maisel. And so I was actually looking forward to this based on the fact that I really liked his character in that. And not only did I not like his character in this, I did not like this movie at all. I mean, it is so repetitive. I mean, you know, yes, so he did a toothpaste commercial, he's a failed actor, and now he's really, you know, trying to sell these like slumlord apartments and trying to get air conditioners in and illegally and doing all this stuff, and the daughter keeps getting him out of jams. And this is the whole movie, and this thing just keeps repeating itself over and over again. He gets in a jam with some, tough guys, and and she gets him out of the jam cleverly, and okay, and it's all right the first time. Not like it's great, but it's okay. But this just keeps going on and on and on throughout the entire movie. It doesn't really go anywhere. But I don't blame Zegan, or as we said, that Casey Bella Suarez, who I believe she's got a career ahead of her. Yeah. I don't really blame them as much as the writer-director, who it's not funny when it's supposed to be funny. When I'm supposed to be emotionally moved by this, I'm moved emotionally. Right. It's dull, it's repetitive, but Randy liked it.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Is that
Beetlejuice?
First of all, I want you two kids to know this is a safe space, okay? Feel free to express yourself. Don't be afraid. I sense there's an enabler here, but we'll get to that.
You're a figment of my imagination.
Really? Is this a figment of your imagination?
That was a clip from the long-awaited sequel, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Notice I didn't say it 3 times. Anyway, it's Randy Unger's personal choice as we go around the panel with our Critics' Picks of the Month. Randy.
So you've got 36 years in the making. 1988 was when the first Beetlejuice premiered, and it took audiences by storm. It was directed by Tim Burton. He was fresh off the heels of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He did this right before Batman, and it was a great film at the time. It was fresh, it was original, it was scary, it was funny, it was wacky, and it had great performances from Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin. Now, 36 years have passed. They have a new movie out, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, and it is not as good as the original, unfortunately. It took them almost 40 years for them to come out with this. But we've got newcomers Jenna Ortega, Justin Theroux, Monica Bellucci, and Willem Dafoe. And it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. It was almost exactly how I expected it to be. I think they could have made this a little earlier. But you got Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, which is just total, it's very zany. It's a lot of fun. It's got fantastic makeup effects, as did the first one, which won an Oscar for that category. Jenna Ortega is also here from Wednesday, which was also directed by the first few episodes by Tim Burton. First four, thank you. So Tim Burton and her have a very good working relationship. You've got Danny Elfman, who's back to score the movie. He kind of beefs up the score a little bit, beefs up the theme, makes it a little more digestible. It's a fun movie. I say go see it.
My pick is a documentary called Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. It is pretty much a biographical documentary about his life, his career, the terrible accident that when he fell off a horse and became paralyzed. Interestingly, I did not see Superman, the original Superman, which made Christopher Reeve a star when he was in theaters, even though I was 13, I was in the comics. I don't know why I missed it, but again, a lot of these movies I saw later. I was never a huge Christopher Reeve fan in general, but the movie really gets you involved. It gets you involved in his life. His kids are very much involved. They have home movies that you've never seen before. And it's a tragic story what happened to him. I mean, he has this huge career, he was on the rise, fell off a horse, became paralyzed, and then he kept on working. He became a huge activist for disabled people over the years, and with his wife who died like a year after he did. But it's a tragic story, but it's told so well, with so much involvement from his family, that you really, it's hard to watch it without tearing up.
Yeah, I agree.
My pick is a film called Strange Darling. And it is definitely a strange film. It stars Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner, and it's written and directed by J.T. Molnar. And basically, it's a story told in 6 chapters with an epilogue, but it's told out of order. Loosely, and I say loosely because I don't want to give away any spoilers, it's about a guy and a girl get together for, let's just say, some rough sex play. Maybe some role playing. Maybe a few things will happen that they don't expect, but a lot of things happen that you don't expect. You as the audience do not expect. The direction that you feel that this film is going and who you think is the good guy versus the bad guy, who's the protagonist, who's the antagonist, is not what you think it is. I highly recommend Strange Darling.
My pick is the award-winning documentary, The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg. Now, it's being re-released only in theaters for its 25th anniversary in a new 4K remastered print. If you're not familiar with who Hank Greenberg was, he was America's first Jewish baseball superstar, and he helped break down the barriers of discrimination in American sports and society. Raised in the Bronx, he wound up playing for the Detroit Tigers. He was a two-time MVP, led his team to 4 World Series, and is inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Nicknamed Hammerin' Hank, or the Hebrew Hammer, he was an extraordinary player who transcended ethnic and religious prejudice to become a hero not only for Jews, but for all Americans. Plus, his remarkable achievements during the golden age of baseball in the 1930s and 40s rivaled those of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, and he's widely considered one of the greatest hitters in baseball history. Now, writer-director Aviva Kempner uses archival footage, along with interviews with other sport legends and movie stars like Walter Matthau, who idolized Hank, and the film talks about his refusal to play on Yom Kippur, the highest holy day in the Jewish religion, in the midst of a heated pennant race. Plus, it examines the massive anti-Semitism that he faced back then, which is particularly timely in the era that we're living in now. This documentary is a grand slam. Check it out. Well, that's about all the time we have. I want to thank Ed Douglas, Mike Sargent, and Randy Unger. I'm Neil Rosen. Join us next time on Talking Pictures.